Okay, so lovely to see you all. Eva and I are going to be facilitating the session with you for the next hour or so. We're going to be talking about the research project that my esteemed colleague Eva has been leading for the last recent while, and also to talk about my experiences of being a coach and providing material with my clients for Eva and her colleagues to analyse. I'm a doctor by background, and I'm a passionate advocate of research because, you know, there's so much evidence that doctors who take part in clinical research, their patients actually have better outcomes. So I kind of feel that now that I'm, you know, my career is as a EMCC master practitioner coach, and I coach supervise, and I have an EMCC foundation level coaching program. I feel, you know, that the clients who I work with and their wider context will hopefully have better outcomes because I'm taking part in research as a coach. So that's kind of why I've been doing this. I've really enjoyed the process. Eva's going to talk us through the research and what she's found. Kind of 15 minutes or so from Eva talking about the research and what she's found, and then we're going to have some breakout groups for 15 minutes to talk about, well, what does this mean for EMCC competences? What does this mean for us as coach trainers, supervisors, coaches? I'm going to talk very briefly about my experience of coaching and providing materials for Eva and the project. Then we'll pull things to a close, and then there's the optional 30-minute networking session that Nicola's going to lead afterwards. So I'm going to hand over to Eva, who can introduce herself more fully and take us through the project.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on this wonderful early morning, late morning, depending on where you are. We're going to take you through our shared work on the context of questioning sequences and coaching. I'm an applied linguist working in Austria, and at the same time, I'm a practicing coach and a coach trainer. So I think I bring these various perspectives together. And as Fiona said, we're both absolutely convinced that good coaching, excellent coaching requires excellent research. And we're very happy to share our work, or my work, and Fiona's participation in this work today with you. So what is this all about? We're all familiar with the fact that questions surround our daily life and also our professional life. There's a lot of research going on the significance of questions in various helping interactions, in psychotherapy, doctor-patient interaction. That's what Fiona already mentioned. Because helping interactions such as coaching are goal-oriented conversations that allow for change in learning in clients. Nothing new, but I think what our linguistic, or my linguistic perspective brings into the focus here is that in the end, everything we do with our clients is have a particular kind of conversation. And given that linguistics is the scientific approach to analyzing conversations, this is where our expertise is when it comes to also analyzing coaching conversations. The idea, or the specific characteristics of helping interactions, helping conversations, is that, in contrast to our everyday conversations, is of course that change and learning in our clients is the goal of our conversations, and at the same time is something that we do, that we co-construct in and through the way we have a conversation. And this at the same time also shows that it's important to reflect on our own doing, conversational doing, but it's also important to bear in mind, how do the clients react, to pay particular attention to all of what they do, not just what they say, but also how they say things. And at the same time, also think about, well, how do we deal with what we get from our clients in the sense of certain answers? This is where we will be focusing on today. Questions in this context, in these goal-oriented conversations, are a central tool for us, or for helping interactions, to invite reflection and change. And at the same time, they already entail some kind of asymmetry with respect to what do the people asking the questions know or assume, and what do the people answering the questions know or assume. And at the same time, it's also about varying participation rights. Who asks the question? Who is invited, or actually sort of invited to answer the question, and how do we deal with it? So questions entailing asymmetry with respect to knowledge and participation rights. When it comes to questions in coaching, what we have is eminence instead of evidence. So when you go to, and you're probably familiar with all of the literature that we find on questioning practices in coaching, but it's very much practice literature. It's very little evidence-based at this point, and this is what we wanted to change. On a more general level, we know from a research perspective now, we know that coaching is effective. There are various meta-analyses in the psychological coaching research available by now, but we still do not know exactly how coaching becomes effective. And I'm not focusing on, what clients bring to coaching, but I'm focusing on coming back to this idea of the conversation. I'm looking into what makes a coaching conversation particularly effective. So what do coaches and clients do together in the local here and now of their conversation to create moments of learning, self-reflection, and change? And this is where questions play a decisive role, but at this point, an under-researched. This is the questioning sequence project that Fiona introduced or mentioned, and this is where we present the major findings today. As you can probably imagine, there's abundant research by now in other areas, but not in the context of coaching and not from a linguistic perspective. So this motivated my colleagues from Germany and Switzerland. As I said, I'm located in Austria, to initiate the so-called DACH project, which means Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. It was a 3-year project, and we had 14 project members. And what's special about this project is it was a cooperation from linguistics and psychology. So we tried to streamline 2 very different and at times challengingly different approaches to phenomena, namely bottom-up descriptive phenomenological approaches, linguistics, what's there, and normative theoretical approaches, as we find in psychology. The goals was to research the local and global change potential of questioning sequences. I'll come to this phenomenon of sequences in a moment, and by this bring together process and the interaction, coach and client interaction, and existing theories of change, because as I said, we've looked into questioning sequences as agents of change. This is the website, and I'm really looking forward to most of you, or at least some of you, visiting our website and gaining more insights there and being given more information there. A lot of information, try to be quick. What is important, and this is also where Fiona and I work together, the most challenging part in that kind of research is to find cooperation partners when it comes to coaching data. We're not carrying out interviews with coaches and clients because we do not build on what you or we remember what we did in a coaching conversation, but we want to find out what is actually happening in the conversation. So what is really done by coach and client, not in a training context, but in authentic coaching business coaching processes in the local here and now. So what we did, we recorded audio and video recorded both face-to-face and online coaching processes from different coaches with their clients. All in all, we have about 60 hours, plus now the very valuable English data by Fiona. So 2 complete coaching processes from the UK. And we did a linguistic transcription. I'll show you later on in some of the slides. We're not only interested in what people say. The content is important, but what is more important is interaction. How hesitant do people formulate something? Is there a repair? Do people reformulate what they just said? Do they, is there a lot of So what is the non-verbal aspects? All of that is very important to understand how coach and client are really in contact. Just briefly, we did sort of a bottom-up and top-down combination as we combined linguistic and psychological methods. So we looked into what's going on the conversational level, developed categories, and on the basis of the categories, then coded the entire data, just to give you a very general idea of how we went about. And this is a very important slide because I said questioning sequences. So this is how we build a conversation in the context of questions. Usually when we discuss questions or coaching questions, we only look into what coaches do. So what kind of questions do they ask to generate solutions, to whatever, to invite concern, things about that. But the coach's question is just one item or just one action, as we call it, in the long run of how we build the conversation. So the coach's question, of course, requires the client's response. This is what we consider, this is what we usually then consider. But the coach's questions, when you look to the left, is motivated by something. So what happens in the conversation that motivates the coach to ask a particular question? And the client's response is, again, when you look to the right, followed by a specific reaction by the coach. Is the coach sort of satisfied with what the client says? Do they go more into depth? Is that something that, requires or motivates the next question? So all of that is important to understand the real influence of questions, and therefore we call it questioning sequences, because they don't come alone, but they are part of a sequence. And this is probably too complex. I just want to point out that, of course, and I would like to go back to the information that I gave on the first slides, a coaching conversation is not an everyday conversation. We as coaches follow a particular theory of change. So we help our client in the context of managing the overall thematic development from presenting the concern, developing the problem or detailing the problem, and then particularly important in coaching, moving to developing solutions. So this is the overarching, this is what you find in these bubbles, that the coaching conversations follow certain, some people call it phases, some people call it basic activities. So we do certain things in coaching on the thematic level, and this is how the prior action question response is sort of on the overall level developed and moving forwards towards transformation, i.e. change. These are our findings. We have 12 coaching-specific questioning types. So if you read through these practice literature where you have things like the 500 best coaching questions, very hard to really put into practice. This is what we found, mind you, on the basis of coding these around 80 hours of coaching conversations. And what I would like to draw your attention to particularly, although of course I could continue talking for hours, is on the left, defining the underlying problem, a basic function of coaching, and developing solutions. And what we found is that we have 2 types of questions dedicated to problems, but we have 4 question types dedicated to solutions. So this rebuilds or reflects our solution generation in coaching. And at the same time, it also shows that discussing problems and evaluating clients' problems is important. The sheer number, so around 940 questions in our context, in our corpus dedicated to problems, around 1,500 questions, and then built into sequences dedicated to problems, to solutions, I'm sorry. This is the sequence that I pointed out. So prior actions, question, coach's questions, client's reactions, and third position, i.e. coach's reaction to client's responses in the second position. I would like to point out 2 things here. So prior actions, we try to condense the very complex ways that coaching conversations deal with questioning practices and came up with these categories. These are the categories based on our bottom-up development and then top-down coding. Just to give you, first of all, the importance of questioning sequences as such. So the sum of questions in the entire corpus is nearly 4,000 questions, and the sum of questioning sequences, 3,023. But what is, I think, is easier to take home with, about 83% of the entire coded and transcribed coaching conversations are part of questioning sequences. Not questions, but questioning sequences, as you see here. So this means, yes, we can claim questioning sequences are an omnipresent and omni-relevant aspect in our actions as coaches and our conversations. Here, I would like to draw your attention to only two things. You can have the slides, you can then go through. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Please look into the reactions. 52% of what our clients do is they do more or they participate. This means coaching has very cooperative clients. Does more means, if I ask you, did you have a chance to talk to your boss as we agreed on last time? Does more means the client would say yes, which means he or she answers the question, but they would then give more information. Yes, I did, and it was a fantastic talk. I was really able to talk about all my issues, and we were really having a good, constructive discussion on how I could move forward. This would be a reaction or an answer that we classify as does more. Participates is if the client would only say, yes, I did. But overall, we have a very high compliance and very, very cooperative clients in coaching. A different issue, for example, in psychotherapy and other helping professions. And the third position, this is what Fiona and I discussed very in detail. This is, of course, where we as coaches need to pay most attention. How do we now deal with what the client did in the second position? How do we continue in our coaching conversation to allow for self-reflection and change? And these are the different categories. So request for clarification or elaboration means most of the times the coach at this point would then still go on and invite the client to go further into their reflection. And this, again, is something that we hypothesize is happening in coaching, but we can now really claim is really doing. And I would like to finalize with 3 slides just to show you what it means to work with that kind of data, and also to show you how complex our coaching conversations really are. So this is an excerpt. This is how we transcribe the data. To the left, you find the exact timing in the video, in the recording. 1829 is line 1829. CO3 is the signal for the coaches, and CL1 would be client 1. You find the questions in bold here. We start with, how are you doing now? How do you feel? Also in view of your goal today. We have a long pause. The coach smacks their lips. Where do you see yourself in the future? 2 minutes break, a gap. Have you gained a little clarity for yourself? So we see that, first of all, coaches often ask many questions in a row. Then we find then is what the client does. And the question developing solutions now comes at the bottom of the slides. So this is what we then categorized as position 1. How will you proceed now? What would you like to do as a next step? So question, topicalizing solution strategies, inviting the client to reflect on their concrete next steps. Next slide. This is position 2. This is the entire data material that you see here is part of or builds clients' responses. So, clients' response, I'm sorry. And although you find coach here every now and then, it's these continuous in the sense of yeah, but all of the material that you see here is the client in position to answering the coach's question, how to develop a solution, what kind of strategy they want. And this is what we discussed and categorized as client does more. If I go back to the slide, how will you proceed now? What would you like to do as a next step? And this is what a very reflective client does or offers as answer to this question. And then the third, to just show you this sequence, position 3, as I said, is where we as coach then evaluate, deal with what the client has given us. The coach here says, no, but you can move both toward right now. That's how I also understand it, right? And this work decision, this long-term goal, these are the paving stone and so on and so forth. So the coach here goes into transformation. He focuses on a change of perspective from problem to solution and focuses on client change. And the client, and this sort of finalizes this sequence here, comes up with a confirmation and doesn't just say yes, but says exactly, yes, exactly. So we can assume that this is a successful sequence, because both of them, first of all, the client goes very much into detail when it comes to elaborating their solution, and then the coach summarizes and engages in transformation, and the client agrees with that. Good. These 3 slides serve to, first of all, show you how we deal with data, and something that I did not mention, everything, should there be the naming of a company, a name, an event that people could recognize, everything is pseudonymized and anonymized. So no recognition would be possible at any point. And like I did in this presentation, when we present data at international conferences or in publications, we only take certain examples out of the entire data, and recognition is impossible. Good. Fiona, would you want to take?
Yeah, so we're going to, there's a couple of questions in the chat that I can see as well. So we're not going to really have time to answer everybody's individual questions because there's quite a lot of people here today, but we will be in the one of the post session in the next kind of half hour. There's going to be a group there around any kind of questions that you might have for Eva about the research. So I think that would be the place to bring that up. 15 minutes then in breakout groups that Nicola is going to organise in a moment, but this 2 questions then, what does this mean around EMCC competencies? How do we make sure that the competencies as trainers that we're, that we're training our coaches in are informed by research? What does this mean for us as providers of coach training? And also just a kind of like broader question about where next. So what other aspects beyond questioning, which is what Eva's been talking about, of coaching communication, what do you think might be interesting? And, some ideas from you would be welcome, so that Eva can inform the next stage of this research. So Nicola.
Here we go. Just pop into the chat some of the things that occurred to you while you were in your breakout rooms. So I was saying to the people who were in this main room while you were coming back, Fiona posed you a question about what does this mean for EMCC competencies and coach training, and what other aspects, as well as questioning, of coaching communication would be interesting topics for future linguistic research. So I'm going to keep quiet now so that you've got just a time just to tap some bits in.
Okay, so thanks for sharing all your feedback. Keep it coming. Trying to keep reading it and at the same time. I suppose I've picked up a couple of questions, one around the cultural aspects, which I'm sure that Eva will be interested in responding to. I know for the two clients that I coached, one was an Indian doctor, another was a Spanish doctor. So although the language that we were using was English, but I think most of the research is based on not English speakers.
Yeah.
And Eva, would you like to respond to
Yeah, thank you. Also from my side, thanks for all the wonderful questions and ideas for future research, but also, you know, things that we have not been able to critically think on or think about. Given that we're such a diverse group ourselves, I think the cultural specificities are particularly interesting. So yes, of course, it matters. Native language competence matters. Cultural background matters, but at this point, mind you, this is all basic research. We're literally the first ones to look into coaching from this interactional linguistic perspective, and we needed to start somewhere. So of course, when we now look into, let's say, German versus English questioning practices, we might be able, or we will detect certain differences. But what we looked into at this point was, how does a specific coaching attitude or coaching theory translate into the concrete interaction in the context of questions? And given that we looked into, for example, systemic solution-oriented coaching, whether that is done in German or English, does not change the question types and does not use questioning sequences. But of course, it would then be very interesting to now go into detail and look into language-specific aspects. And at the same time, of course, do look into, we just discussed that, whether, for example, a European coaching background is a different one than a Latin American coaching background. So this is, of course, something that we need to take into consideration. And this is not representative findings in the sense of that this is how coaching is done. Culture or questioning is done. Culture plays a role. But at the same time, we did not look into, we looked into question types. And I would claim that we find overarching similarities when we look into, for example, systemic solution-oriented business coaching across various linguistic, language, and cultural backgrounds. Just in a nutshell. Much more to do research on.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about, you know, EMCC competences and how do we make sure that the EMCC competences, I'm not saying this is the only piece of research. Obviously, there's increasing amounts of research, isn't there, into, you know, not into the black box of how coaching is effective. And I don't know, is anybody from EMCC competency setting here that has any thoughts about that? I'm not sure. Let's have a look at some. Nicola's flashed the competencies up there, but yeah, okay. So what about? There was a question about open and closed questions, and I don't know, Eva, if you wanted to respond to that.
This is thanks for the question, because this is a question that we always get. What's the difference, or what about the difference between open and closed questions, and this idea that we should not ask closed questions because that would inhibit our clients to fully flesh out their, you know, thoughts and Mind my language, crap. There is no difference between open and closed questions when it comes to allowing clients to do what they want. We ask the question, but our client is an agentive person who gives their own answer or their own reply according to their own needs, according to their own possibilities, willingness to share, and so on and so forth. Of course, certain closed questions like, how old are you? Is that new date okay for you? This is a different story. This is information gathering. But in the context of inviting our clients to reflect, we did a small but survey with psychologists and linguists. And what we did, we measured the answering times. So the length the language length and also the time length of replies to open and closed questions, and there was no difference. So we talked about powerful tools, questions as powerful tools, but our clients are very powerful in answering. So if they want to share more, they will share more whether you ask an open or closed question. So this is a distinction that is really not valid. What is important is to be aware of when do certain questions, to pay attention to how your client reacts, to read them, to be careful, or to pay particular attention on how do they formulate the answers, and then how to react to that. This is what allows you to be in good contact and motivate them. But whether or not you ask a closed or open question doesn't make any difference.
There's also, thank you, Eva, for sharing that. There's also a few questions about the coach's experience, and I've noticed in coaching literature, particularly in the last couple of years, that they're starting to quantify the coach's training or experience or independent accreditation status. So rather than this is research on coaching and coaches, it actually kind of then documents that in a little bit more detail. So Eva, do you want to respond to that in terms of your own particular research?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is, of course, absolutely important. And when we collected the data, what we required coaches to have is at least 5 years of professional practice in coaching, working as a systemic solution-oriented coach, and having gone through certain qualification processes. Because yes, of course, that matters. And I don't know how you all feel when you work as a coach trainer. The more experienced we get, the easier for us it is to only focus on our client, to be with the client, and to go with the flow, instead of having sort of a, this is the question I need to ask next. And this is, there's this difference between following a manual, what we need in the very beginning, because we need to learn to do coaching, but then we become artists, and we become we can relate more and more to what's happening in the moment with our client. And although, of course, we follow a particular theory of change and follow our, put our training into practice, but at the same time, so I guess what I try to say is, yes, experience matters a lot. And yes, it shows in the data whether people are experienced in how they ask questions, when they ask questions, and particularly how much they pay attention to what they get from their clients.
There's also quite a lot of chat about artificial intelligence and opportunities and fears around this. Would anybody like to comment? I think we've got EMCC UK's digital lead here. I think I saw something from, I can't remember your name off the top of my head, I'm so sorry. Anybody like to comment on AI?
Well, I just made the comment that if we end up with a kind of mechanical set of sequences of questions, then it's easy for AI just to tap into it. You might as well just all give up and go home. Whereas most coaching conversations are about sensing and working with intuition. And I've spent a lot of time, allowing people just to go, well, what do you feel is right in this conversation? Not sitting there. And the number of people who I have, when we've been doing supervision sessions together, have been trying mechanically to stick to models and stuff like that, to say, well, what came up right? And they've come back the next time and said, well, when I let the conversation flow, it was so much more effective. So all the time. And if you're using up your brain trying to keep up with models in the background rather than focusing on the client, where is your attention? So, but if we create an environment where AI can pick up a series of questions and very quickly run through the coaching, the sequence for that particular discussion, is that the most helpful for that client, or is that perceived as the most helpful and the only way to do it?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I can really hear your kind of concerns around how you stay really present and in the moment with the client, and some of the tensions that arise for you around that. Paul Kendrick, sorry, I think that's your name. I don't want to put you totally on the spot, but if there is anything that you would like to you said How do you see these factors, moving the human factor up the value chain, shaping AI? Then you said about AI supervising humans and vice versa, which was really expanding my own thinking around this. If you're there, Paul, is there anything you'd like to say? And if not, we'll start to move things to a close. Okay, so we've just kind of really just tried to just kind of touch the surface really of Eva's research here. She can direct you to her most recent publications on this, where quite a few of the questions that you've asked in terms of methodology and findings, where she can direct you to those, and the website that's got a wealth of resource. But I just wanted to talk through, before we start to close, around my own experiences of being a pro bono coach, providing materials to Eva's research team, and how that came about. So I read Eva, so Graf and Dion, a couple of papers in International Coaching Psychology Review in 2021 about, talking about the kind of summarizing the research evidence base around coaching and new frontiers, and talking about their linguistic research and how they're integrating psychology and linguistics. And I thought it was really, really interesting. So I emailed her and I said, oh, I'm just really fascinated by what you're doing, and do you need any coaches? So that was probably about a year ago, I think, wasn't it? So I kind of went through the whole kind of governance process in terms of identifying suitable clients, consenting, getting insurance, making sure that all the data security, obviously, lots and lots of data security things that I needed to think through in terms of GDPR or whatever, your own individual data security, privacy, confidentiality processes. It was all very straightforward. I had plenty of volunteers wanting to take part in it. And I recorded just using, like I am here, just, however, working online, just as you are. I didn't need any special equipment, just use my microphone. And it was very, very easy in terms of at the end of every 90-minute session that I had with the client, I'd get their signed consent form back to release that particular episode, upload it to Eva's university site. It would take about 2 minutes to upload a 90-minute video. I was really, really surprised about that. I really enjoyed taking part because, I enjoyed Eva was brilliant in terms of keeping me posted around what was happening with the research and what the findings were. And I just really enjoyed taking part in it. And my clients, the 2 clients who took part in it as well, they really enjoyed, contributing to the wider research base. And I know they're really looking forward to hearing the findings as they're starting to emerge as well. So from my perspective, I really enjoyed it. And I'm really hoping as well that as Eva's team move into the next stage of their research, hopefully I'll be able to reconsent my clients to have their data released for whatever different angle that she's taking next time as well, without actually having to provide new materials as well. So because I think the transcription itself is incredible. If anybody's ever transcribed qualitative research, this is like a whole nother level of complexity that has to be documented in terms of the linguistics. So I'm just going to hand over to Eva for any final
thank you. It was absolute pleasure to work with you, Fiona. And as Fiona said, she sent me an email, and we really took it from there. And ever since, we try to find new ways of cooperating, and this is what this research should be about. It should be research that is of value for practitioners. And I don't know, Jason, I see you on my screen now. I don't know whether model you also referred to, the delimiting power of, or the delimiting challenges of such models. So what we tried with this model was really just to describe what conversations are about. So there's always a reply to a question, and I think this might help us to, as coaching practitioners, to be more in the moment by just realizing how important it is, to focus on what our clients say and also how they say it, and then to also focus on how we then react to that. Not in the sense of this is what we need to do, but these are ways of how we can deal with these situations. We're currently putting together a next research project that builds, that sort of starts off from the importance of questioning practices, and we're going to look into the relationship management in coaching. So when we look into psychological coaching research, is this phenomenon of the working alliance, which is one of the success factors in coaching. Nobody has looked into how that is really done. It's good to measure, but what do we really do when we have a good working alliance with our clients? This is what we want to do next. And of course, although this is the data that we have is worldwide, the only existing corpus of authentic coaching data, it is still a small database. I fully agree. So we need more evidence bases of what, of coaching conversations. And you'll have my email contact on the slides. And I'm more than happy not just to, to get in contact with you to answer more questions, but also maybe to invite you to participate in future research. The website that is on the slides is also more detailed how that would work, what happens. It shows all our research output. You can download the articles, and there are 2 recent papers by my PhD student Melanie Fleischhacker and myself that explains the method in more detail and gives you an overview of what linguistic research has done so far. It's not that much because it's just me and my research group worldwide, which is still very a small group, but we're growing, we're getting there. And and as I said, I'm a practitioner myself, and I always try to do that to bring all the different hats that I have together. And thank you very much for your attention. Everything's on the slide. Fiona, it's a pleasure to work with you, and I'm looking forward to everything that comes after that. And that's all from my side. And I don't know, handing over to Nicola.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you. I mean, your research is absolutely fascinating, and the input from everybody here has just been so well considered and really, really thoughtful. And thank you everybody who's really, really engaged in this session. But just before we end, we've had such a great conversation here today. I wonder, Fiona and Eva, what sticks in your mind from this session here? What sticks in your mind yourself? Perhaps I could ask Fiona first and then finish off with Eva.
I really enjoyed all of the discussions, and really wish we had loads more time to go into them in much more detail, as well as kind of hearing about Eva's research and all the questions about that and all the things that's provoking. I think the thing that I'm going to really take away as a kind of learning point for me is around the level of fear, but also the level of opportunity around AI. And I had never ever thought about AI supervising coaching or vice versa as well. So that's something that I'm going to go away and think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. What about you, Eva?
For me, it's actually this. It's so important to get together and discuss things. That's what sticks with me, which is very unspecific, but at the same time very telling. And there's always too little time to do all these extremely interesting and valuable and important things. And one of that is to sit down together and discuss research findings, is discuss our various perspectives, is consider what we, sit down together and decide what would be the next important research aspect. How could we better work together, theory, science, practitioners, because I have the feeling that the future of coaching is brightest when both qualitative and quantitative research work together. Quantitative research at this point is much more visible, much more heard of, much more discussed. It's important, but it takes everything. It takes qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods, and it takes triangulation, and it takes transdisciplinary research. Us sitting down together, practitioners, trainers, and researchers, and really think what's important next. And there's so many research questions that are unanswered at this point. So I'm overwhelmed, and at the same time happy that we had this wonderful opportunity today. And as I said, please get back to us, to Fiona and myself, and let's see. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, this is what this community is all about. It's all about co-creation and bringing people together to add new perspectives and to, you know, challenge from different directions and just see things and hear things from different perspectives. And so this conversation has been so brilliant. Thank you so much for bringing your research to us.